Now I'm reading out the poem and explaining each and every line. Driving from my parents' home to Cochin last Friday morning, I saw my mother beside me, doors open-mouthed, her face ashen like that of a corpse, and realized with pain that she was as old as she looked. But soon put that thought away and looked out at young trees sprinting, the merry children spilling out of their homes. But after the airport security check, standing a few yards away, I looked again at her, wan pale as a late winter's moon, and felt that old, familiar ache, my childhood's fear. But all I said was, "See you soon, Amma." All I did was smile and smile and smile. Now you see, the whole poem is in a single sentence, punctuated by commas already given in your text. It indicates a single thread of thought, interspersed with observations of the real world around and the way these are connected to the main idea. There's a fear of loss. The poem, you see, it's composed in blank verse, expresses the anxiety, worry, anguish of a daughter over her mother's advancing age and the fear of permanent separation from her. The fast-paced life and the inevitable death of her childhood, youth and loved ones. The poet is agonized by her mother's advancing age and fear of her imminent death. And the poet is also carried away by her childhood premonition of losing her mother. So while driving from her parents' home to Cochin last Friday, the poet Kamala Das notices her mother, who was sitting beside her, dozing with her mouth open. So when the mother was dozing and her mouth was open, this reveals that the mother has become aged. Her mother's face was pale like a dead body. The expression on her face was clearly one of pain, born out of fear of separation and old age. Her face ashen like that of a corpse and realized with pain that she was as old as she looked. So with a beautiful simile, the poet compared her mother that she was as old as she looked. And she realizes that her mother is old now and could pass away leaving her all alone. Though the realization was alarming, it was really hard to accept. In order to drive her thoughts away from the agony and pain on looking at her mother's colorless, lusterless, pale face, Kamala Das looks outside the car. The trees racing past and the speeding car were grim reminders that time has flown by. The joyous children playing outside represent youth, energy, vigor, mobility, dynamism. All this probably reminded of her childhood when her mother was young. And here the poet also has drawn a contrast between the scene inside the car and the scene outside the car. And the contrast is beautifully highlighted. Inside the car, there is an environment of gloom and despondency. And outside the car, there's a spirit of rejuvenation, a spirit of jubilation, a spirit of liveliness. Now, after the security check at the airport, Kamala Das looks back at her mother standing a few years away, looking pale and grey like the winter moon. Here also, the poetic device simile is used by the poet beautifully. The poetess senses a familiar pain which is very known to her, and a childhood fear of the thought of losing her mother comes back. Overcome with sorrow and fear, she bids her old mother goodbye and keeps smiling to hide her real feelings. Internally, she is shattered, but externally, she is providing reassurance to her mother that her mother will live long. Now, this poem brings out a beautiful message that the youth of today are so busy in fulfilling their desires and wishes that they forget to take care of their elderly parents when they need them the most. At times, situation can be binding. It's obviously true. But one should never forget to show one's love, affection, and concern for one's parents. The poem is written in free verse. It has no rhyme scheme. The whole poem is in a single sentence, I already mentioned, punctuated by commas. Now the literary devices used here are simile, her face ashen like that of a corpse, when pale as a late winter's moon. Then there's a repetition, smile and smile and smile, and at the same time there's an alliteration because S sound is repeated thrice. There are symbols and images, trees printing, merry children, winter's moon. And the use of simile is very effective. The face of the poet's old mother is described as ashen. This ashen face is like that of a corpse, means dead body. The poet uses another simile. The wan, pale face of the mother is compared to a late winter's moon. The poem excels in contrasts. The old dozing lady inside is contrasted with the young trees sprinting and merry children spilling out of their homes. So this beautiful poem creates a feeling of nostalgia. And the poet is also carried away by her childhood premonition of losing her mother. So it's a beautiful, touching poem, and the subtle relationship between the mother and the daughter is wonderfully expressed. So you will have to perceive the mood of the poem in your mind and then feel it. Now, the questions already given to you. Try to understand the poem and then solve the questions. Perceive the mood of the poem, feel from the inner core of your heart the perception which you have, and then solve them. I think it will be easier for you to understand. Thank you, children.